Okay, so welcome everybody. Welcome to another BEL session. This is BEL session number 7. And my name is Ronald Setut, Ronald Setut for everybody in Haiti. Today we have a very important topic. At least I think it's important. I'm pretty sure our guest speaker today thinks it's important. But I think it's important mainly because I see a lot of businesses in Haiti and a lot of businesses here in the US as well that don't pay too much attention to their accounting, even when it comes to just the basics. I work with a lot of startups. My name is Ronald again, like I mentioned, director of the BEL Initiative, and I work with so many entrepreneurs in Haiti. And one of the things that is lacking is the basics of education when it comes to finances and accounting. So I am particularly big on this. Rick is probably going to be involved with BEL for a while. He probably doesn't know that yet, but I'm glad that he's here. And Rick, go ahead and introduce yourself. Let everybody know who you are, the name of your company and what you do.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Ronald. And, thanks for reaching out and inviting me to join you guys on this session. As Ronald said, my name is Rick Sinordo. I'm a CPA here in Georgia and Atlanta area. I was born in Fort Lauderdale, and my parents are from Haiti, of course, and it's just, trying to be connected back to Haiti. So definitely I'm always, looking to help get back and just, connect with our people. So I own my own company. I'm a CPA. Modern CPA Group is the name of my company. I have spent several years in public accounting, which pretty much is just accounting for mainly the big companies, the big public companies, or even private companies, Fortune 500 companies that I've worked with. And so growing up, I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, originally from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I got into, my own business. I think it inherently, and not even realizing at the time. So my father, he actually had his own business for a while. So he's a tailor down in Fort Lauderdale. And he actually used that to, migrate over from Haiti. Even when he was, I think he learned how to sew back when he was like a teenager or like a preteen, maybe around 14, 15, I believe, just started out just, needing to make his own clothes for school. So he grew up in Port-au-Prince. And so,
wow, we family, man.
Yeah, well, actually, he grew up in La Pointe. So I know La Pointe is right around Port-au-Prince, yeah. And so that afforded him, the opportunity to save up money and everything to, make his journey over to the US. So I think just growing up, seeing him and just understanding that life of, working for yourself and trying to build for your family and trying to give yourself a better future. I think after a while, for years and years, that just stuck with me and it was ingrained in me. And I didn't even know it really. And it just popped one day that I always wanted to own my own business. That I knew. And so, being older and looking back and thinking about it, I'm like, what, it's the seeds that I saw and the seeds that he planted, which got me to that point. So, after working in for big companies for a couple of years, I said to myself, like, what, I want to really make an impact, really help business owners and entrepreneurs, help them realize their dream and their vision. I understood, I'm really good with numbers and, obviously had this accounting background, and it's like, what, a lot of businesses and business owners struggle with that. And so started my own company and here I am today, just, connecting with different business owners, and, trying to help you guys out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rick, man. I think we family, man, maybe. Yeah, my family's from Port-au-Prince too. So that's what pretty much almost all of my family is from, and some of them are still there. So we
yeah, if not family, I'm pretty sure they may know each other.
Most likely. It's a small place. So before we move forward, I do want to introduce William Duyon, who's part of the BEL team as well. He's also a 2018 BEL fellow. William, I don't know if you're there, but if you are there, say hey. All right, maybe not. I know he was having some internet issues. And then I also see some other BEL fellows in here. Raul, I think that's Raul Moliere, if I'm correct. And then Delise, and then our most, thanks Raul. Then we have Antonio, actually 2020 fellow, Antonio Nicholas. He's one of our 2020 fellows. And I also see Joseph Kendi Jules, who just joined. So welcome to the BEL fellows as well. Thank you for hopping in. So let's go ahead and get started, man. Let's jump right into it. The first thing I want to ask, and it sounds like a very basic question, but I do this a lot when it comes to different topics because I find that sometimes, even though it sounds common, I might not actually know what it is. But what is accounting?
Good question.
What is accounting? I mean, when we hear that, most people are like, especially business owners. I know even myself, when I first started a business, I was like, I know my numbers. But what is accounting? What is that?
So, and I'll try to use like pretty much like layman's terms. Like accounting, the way I describe it, it's pretty much the way you record everything your business does, right? On paper from a financial perspective. To me, that's kind of like a basic term of it. So anything, your business does, whether it's regarding selling, spending money, what you have, what the business owns, financially on paper, your accounting will be able to record that, and it tells the story of your business, right? So the phrase that the billionaire Warren Buffett, he says, is that accounting is the language of business. And it pretty much be able to, it's how you tell everything that's going on with your company. Any transaction, anything that happens to the company or that the company does needs to be recorded somehow. And then accounting is basically that system of how you do that from a financial perspective.
Nice. That makes sense. And let me just throw this out there. Pour moun yo ki nan Haiti, this webinar is in English, so si yon bagay ou pa kompon, ou met no chat la, put it in the chat, and then William will go ahead and he's going to translate it for us. So just keep that in mind. Si yon bagay ou pa kompon, ou met di nou sa, pi we'll go ahead and try to translate it for you all. So first question, we shouldn't take questions now, but I'll go ahead and do it since we're a little informal. And it's along the lines of the question. Edwin says, is accounting the same thing as bookkeeping?
So it's not the same thing as bookkeeping, but what I will say is that bookkeeping has a place in your accounting, right? Because bookkeeping is just specifically saying, I am recording in your system, right? So your accounting software, most people understand they have the accounting software, but you're recording the transactions and you're categorizing them correctly. So just as an example, if you spend money on a promotion, right? So that promotion is then going to be like your advertising and marketing. So bookkeeping is just says like, hey, this $500 I spent is for marketing. So that's all bookkeeping does. So accounting is going to be just all the rules in place. What is income? What is an expense? What's an asset? There's a lot of accounting is more like the structure of it all. Bookkeeping is just a piece of an accounting. So it's related. It's related.
That was a really good question, actually. And that's a good answer. I'm glad you mentioned that because
it definitely is. So you may have someone who says like, they are a bookkeeper. But if they're like I, part of my business, I do bookkeeping for people, but not every bookkeeper is an accountant or a CPA. So.
Right. Wow. Okay. So there's a difference between bookkeeping and accounting. Bookkeeping is a part of accounting, if I'm correct. If you're saying that, if I'm understanding that correctly, right?
Yeah, from a task perspective, you think about like you have tasks that to do, like bookkeeping is a task. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So when we are starting out, when a small business is starting out, let's say we work with a lot of startups, is the first thing that they should be doing is bookkeeping, or is it accounting? Should we be thinking about accounting as a whole, or how should we be starting out?
So when you think about it, you're starting out, you're thinking about, and you're being conscious of your accounting, right? Bookkeeping piece, yes, you would do that from the very beginning because the bookkeeping is actually recording the transactions, right? So a lot of businesses, for example, startups, right? They need to normally spend money just to even get themselves up and running, and they have those startup costs. Well, you have to be, you should be tracking whatever you spend.
Yeah.
So part of you tracking it, that's already starting to perform some bookkeeping. So if you are, here in the US, or whichever country that you're in, and then you have to like register your business with the country or with the state, you'll already start to spend, money just to get your business licenses and things like that. Well, you have
Yeah.
to track that, right? So a lot of business owners would not even track their startup expenses because they feel like, oh, I haven't made money yet. I
Yeah.
haven't started yet. So at the very beginning, yeah, you want to start recording and tracking everything. And so that will be the bookkeeping piece that'll start to come up in the beginning.
So yeah, and that's a good question. Let's go back to that. I'm starting out again, and I'm in a mindset that I don't need to keep track of these things.
Yeah.
Do we need an accountant at that point, or is it just basic tracking since we're so small? If we're a small business or starting out.
Yeah. So I get that question a lot. I do come from people who obviously are starting businesses all the time, right? So what I like to tell them is you do need an accountant. It's never a bad idea to bring in an accountant as early as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how you go about the services that you take on, or that you get from an accountant, that's what can vary, right? Because if you are in the very, very early stages, and like you said, you're just kind of spending money and doing the startups, maybe you may not bring an accountant on full time. And what I mean by full time is you may not be paying an accountant every month to manage the books for you, or manage your bookkeeping, or just help you out with your transaction, because you don't have a lot of activity going on. You're just spending money right now. But if you consult with an accountant at the beginning, they can help you set the foundation in place. So I would tell people, try to bring on an accountant as early as possible, to one, help you set that good foundation, and two, you'll start to build a relationship with that accountant, and kind of be able to determine, like, is this accountant a good fit for me,
Mm-hmm.
earlier on, right? So that helps you build that relationship with the accountant. So then once you are up and running, and you're going, and you are, making way more money, or having a lot of transactions and activity, then you already have an accountant. So yeah, definitely try to bring one in as early as possible, with understanding that you may not have the financial income yet to bring them on all their services.
Mm-hmm. So what would, and it looks like, I'm sorry, I missed Edwin's, he was making some comments, Raul and Edwin. So Raul says, at what point in the startup life you can switch from Excel accounting to professional accounting software?
Yeah. So I try to tell people to do it as early as possible, right? Because I know when you start a business, because you haven't made money yet, you're trying to keep, expenses as low as possible, right? When it comes to accounting software, I feel like the advantages outweigh the costs of having it early on, because if you don't have it early on, what ends up happening is you will end up getting into the habit of keep doing it in Excel, because you're just used to doing it that way. And you'll technically kind of miss that point where you feel like, oh, I'm bringing in a lot, I can really switch over now. And the way it is now, I mean, accounting software is relatively pretty inexpensive. Like, you can start off with the lowest service level from this accounting softwares, which may be like $20 a month or something like that, which I think is, for the most part is doable. So I would definitely say, try to, as early as possible, definitely try to bring that software in, especially if you're spending money. That's the thing. Once those transactions start going and you're spending money, even if you're not making money, but you're spending money, then definitely you want to start tracking that.
Okay. I hope that answers your question, Raul. And Edwin mentions, I asked the question because a lot of people do bookkeeping. Edwin originally asked the question between the difference between accounting and booking. And he said he asked the question because a lot of people do bookkeeping and think they're doing accounting. and it's
Kinda,
important to
yeah.
know the difference.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. That's definitely a good question. It's like I said, the bookkeeping is just the task. It's the
Mm-hmm.
task of recording. It's almost like saying, you think about someone who's just doing like data entry.
Uh-huh.
It's almost like a data entry type of task, bookkeeping, right? Because, you are saying, hey, here's all the transactions that happen, and now let me record this in my accounting software. So then that way it shows, I can see for the month, what was my income, what was my expenses, right? That's just really, it's really just data entry, or kind of like data categorizing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Gotcha.
yeah, it's definitely a good distinction to make.
That's good. That's good to know. And I mean, well, I can't see everybody, but I was going to ask everybody to raise their hands and see how many people actually started out doing bookkeeping, um, and didn't know the difference. But no, I'm glad that question came up. So really, really good question, Edwin. That's something I think even I need to make sure that I'm aware of when I'm actually thinking about accounting in general for my business. So, Rick, we don't need it at we don't necessarily need it at the beginning, from what I'm hearing. But let's say I do want an account, because let's say I have no knowledge of
Yeah.
managing finances or anything like that. What would I start out if I couldn't afford an accountant, full time, and I had to pay an accountant to do something? What would be like the basic things somebody would ask you to do if they can't hire you to kind of manage their whole financial situation for their
Got
business?
it. So it depends. It depends if we're talking, just if you're talking like from a tax perspective, but if you're talking about, helping manage the finance, some people would decrease the frequency of performing bookkeeping, right? Because most of the time you want to do like your bookkeeping, or even looking through your finances monthly.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, some people end up saying, okay, can we do this quarterly instead, or can you do a financial review, where they may sit down with an accountant at the beginning of them kind of putting their business together, right? And then come back and review later on to make sure they're putting everything in the right categories. They're, kind of give them some kind of financial consulting. So those are some of the things you can do at the beginning if you're not at the point of bringing somebody on full time. Yeah. So sometimes like there's the accounting like sessions is some things that I see a lot of people would do at the beginning.
Okay. And what is there? So Alan has a question, and I'm going to hold off on the questions for a little bit, because I know we have to get through this, but I think it's a good question. Um, can an accountant help advise on what type of business should set up, whether that be an LLC or an S corp for tax purposes? Can an accountant do that, or is there somebody else that's supposed to be advising them on that?
Yeah. So it's interesting because there's two sides to it, right? So there is setting up your business, from a legal perspective. So then that's when you would hear a lot of people saying like, hey, contact like a lawyer, right, to help you with that. And then, but from a tax perspective, but an accountant definitely can. So the one thing I want to say for people to understand too is that accountants and CPAs are different. They're all different. So they all can specialize in different areas. And some will do certain services and some won't. Like, right. So I have a degree in accounting, right? So when I obviously went in school, I took a class on taxes and I took a class on just like regular financial accounting. But someone may decide like, you know what, I don't want to deal with taxes at all. And there are some accountants that don't do taxes, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you get in contact with that accountant who doesn't do taxes, they may not be the one to kind of help advise you on should be an LLC or an S corp. But overall, an accountant who knows about taxes would be able to help you with that decision.
Good, good. That's a good answer, and it's almost kind of tricky too, I guess, coming from a outside of being an accountant. I'm not an accountant,
Yeah,
so naturally, as the business owner, I'm naturally asking myself, well, is it the lawyer, is it
yeah.
the accountant? Who is qualified to tell me how to set this up for business purposes, or how I should be, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And here's throw a monkey wrench to you too, because some people end up becoming tax attorneys.
Ah.
Yeah, so I know some, so CPAs who then end up going to law school.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Think about it this way. It's just like having doctors in different areas, right? Because you can have a doctor who works on your, your feet, your podiatrist, right? But then
Mhm.
you have the doctor who does internal medicine. They're both doctors, but they're two.
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the general questions that I think is important, I think that everybody wants to kind of know too, is, how does accounting help increase my profitability as a business? Can it help me save money? Do I make more money? Do I actually, and are there times where I think I'm making money when I'm actually not?
Yeah. Yeah. So like I said earlier, right? So accounting is the language of business, right? So accounting helps you understand what's going on in your business. It can help you because you're going to record and track everything, and then you can know what's going on in your business. So that'll help you with making decisions to reach, your goals, your business goals, your financial goals. I know that like the three things I like to think about is decision making, longevity, and profitability, right? And so if you think about running your business, you can't improve if you don't, know what's going on, right?
Hmm.
You can't track what you're not measuring, right? So if you're saying like, hey, I want to grow my company, the only way for you to grow your company is to know what your company is doing now, where your company is now, and where you're trying to get to. And so accounting will help you do that, because once you set a strong financial foundation, and you have your books, or we'll call it, your books are what we call clean, meaning everything is recorded properly, recorded correctly and timely, then you can say like, hey, last month I did this amount of revenue. This month I'm on pace to do this amount of revenue. Like, hey, if I want to, reach my goal by the end of the year, I need to find a way to either get more clients or spend less money, or, so having that viewpoint is just like having like a GPS or roadmap to
Hmm.
get to where you to from a profitability standpoint, right? Us here, Ronald, in right, traffic is bad, right?
Oh yeah.
So
Whew.
yeah, you turn on that GPS so you know which street to take. Should I take the highway? Should I not take the highway? Should I leave at a certain time? And so that's what your accounting can do for you. It can be that roadmap, to get you to where you want to get to from a financial perspective. And obviously, being more profitable is having more money at the end of the day left over, reinvest into the business and help it grow. So that's definitely some of the ways accounting can help you do that.
And you said decision making,
Mhm.
longevity, and
Yeah,
profitability.
profitability. Yeah,
Profitability. Listen, all right,
yeah.
type that in there. All right, so I put it in the chat for everybody. Those are some notes for you all. So accounting can definitely help with that. I'm taking notes on that. I think those are really good things to remember.
Mhm.
Um, I can't help but to get away from the idea that um, as somebody who's in business, or like everybody else who's in here, we have special skill sets. We have things that are important to us. Some
Yeah.
of us are designers, some of us build, some of us, focus on the arts. Um, how do we not force ourselves, but what behaviors should we be taking? Because I just meet a lot of entrepreneurs too, who they get caught up in just what they want to do, which is fine.
Yeah.
They want to focus on what their skill set is, but
Yeah.
you have this accounting aspect, which is not fun. We don't like to look at it. As long as we're bringing some money in, we're not closing shop,
Mhm.
then I'm not really paying too much attention to it. Um, what kind of behaviors do I need to be putting in place, or things that I need to be keeping in mind, even though that's not something that I'm concerned about on a day-to-day basis? Should I be thinking about that every day? I know we're supposed to hire somebody to do this, but what kind of behaviors do I need to kind of try to build as somebody who's naturally not interested in accounting
Yeah. Yeah.
on
So
my craft?
yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I say all the time, like accounting is not sexy, but it's necessary. Um, you I think a lot of business owners, they like to stick in the space of sometimes advertising, sometimes marketing, because that's more so talking about their business. When one of the things and one of the big things, this happens in just personal finances, period, is not reviewing from a financial perspective, like what's going on, right? And so you move from 1 month to 1 month without even like looking at your numbers, without looking at your finances. And so getting in the habit of reviewing your finances, the performance of your business, that's really what it is. You're reviewing how your business is performing on a periodic basis. That's one of the keys and one of the habits that you want to do. Even if you aren't the one doing it, even if you hire an accountant, right? At the end of the day, the accountant is going to be the one to put everything together for you, get your numbers right, make sure everything's correct. If you handling your taxes, make sure you're in compliance from a tax perspective, and that you're saving as much money as possible. But still, it's your business and you're running the business, meaning the decisions and the liability of the business being in operations falls all on your shoulders. So your shoulders are, if you got partners, all the owners of the company. And so reviewing that periodically, whether it's definitely, I try to say definitely monthly, at minimum quarterly, right? To know what's going on, even if you aren't the one specifically doing it. You definitely want to know what's going on. So, because as the owner, it's going to be hard for you to keep your business running and growing if you don't know what's going on.
Gotcha. I'm gonna put you on spot for a second,
Yeah.
just to see if you have it. But you don't happen to have a basic accounting sheet on your laptop to show us by any chance, do you?
When you say basic accounting sheet, do you mean
Or a
like
balance sheet? I'm sorry, or like a template.
let me see. I can't pull up any of my clients, but I think, let me double check. I think I have a sample one.
Okay.
You kind of like want to go through it and
Yeah, just kind of be a little bit hands-on. I know Edwin, who's in the chat room, I know he's big on that. And so if you have one, I wanted to actually pull that up so that people can get an idea of what that actually looks like.
gotcha.
Even if it's blank, and we can probably just fill it in. But while you're looking for that, if you can find one, let me just go to some of the questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Let's see. Joseph said, what accounting software would you recommend to a startup? Free or cheap softwares?
So the number one that we all hear is QuickBooks, right? And
Yep.
QuickBooks is kind of like it's the number one. It's kind of like the gold standard of accounting software, right? They don't have a free version. They have a self-employed version, which I think they call it Simple. And I think that one is I believe, don't quote me on it, because they change their prices, but I think it's anywhere between like $7-15 a month. And then there's another one that's a little bit newer. It's called Wave Apps or Wave Financial. Wave actually has a free version, and so, but it's a limited, right, to what features you can get. But they do actually have a free version. So sometimes, business owners I talk to, if they really, 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 really want something free, I would tell them like, hey, well, you can check out Wave, and then transition over to QuickBooks once you're ready. But at least that way you're tracking everything. So those are the two, but QuickBooks definitely that's the gold standard I recommend. Now there's others, like there's one called Xero and FreshBooks. Yeah, I see someone just said Xero is good also. I was gonna say, when it comes to comparing the two, a lot of times it just comes down to preference. Just like people who are Mac, Apple users, and some people are PC users, it comes down to preference. But those are primarily the top two in the industry that you'll hear is QuickBooks, and then Xero would be the next one. Xero is a little bit newer. They are actually, I want to say they've only been in the US maybe definitely less than 10 years. I think maybe 5 to 7 or so years, I believe, but definitely less than 10. I think, and I believe they're out of they're a company out of Australia, I believe. Yeah. So but those are the two. And then I actually found a sample company that I can show you guys some of the financial statements.
Okay. Um,
Let's see.
Nicholas says, Antonio, I'm calling you by your last name if you don't mind. But his question was, what is most important when starting a company? You kind of touched on this a little bit, but not really specifically. But what's most important when you start a company if you have to choose between a lawyer or an accountant?
Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
It's gonna be interesting. Is I mean, because I don't want to discredit lawyers, right? And I can't say, what's most important because I'm gonna say they're equally important for two reasons, right? So a lawyer is gonna keep you out of trouble, and when you talk about like your liability, being sued and things of that nature, because if you don't set things up right at the beginning, because you bypassed, talking to a lawyer and how you wanted to put your contracts, you can set yourself up down the road to be, to get sued. And that can cost you thousands and tens of thousands of dollars, depending on, whatever it is. Whereas if you don't deal with an accountant or someone, to give you that financial knowledge, you can end up running out of business. So, cases you can end up running out of business, right? If you don't have that, that amount of money to handle the lawsuit or whatever. So they're equally important. They have two different specialties,
Right.
It's like saying like you have both parents in your life and which one's more important. It'll be hard to choose.
Right, right.
Yeah, and Dr. Edwin said it's like building the car. What's more important, the brakes or the steering wheel? Yeah, that's a perfect analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a tough one. And I think if you had to choose, I would hope you don't have to choose, but I know that that's a reality for some
Yeah.
people. So I think it also depends on your industry or what kind of business you're going into. You
Yeah.
know, um,
Too. Yeah.
obviously if you're starting maybe, I don't know, let's say you're starting a something simple. Let's say you're probably just selling things from home.
Yeah.
You might not need a heavy lawyer to kind of come in and legally tell you that, you can't sell this stuff or you can't sell it. I mean, some things are pretty basic. The law will let you know whether you can sell from home or not. But let's say you're
Yeah.
just selling stuff out your home. You might not need to make a big investment in the attorney until, you're ready to scale up a little bit more and you start getting a little bigger and things start getting a bit more complex. So maybe an accountant.
Yeah.
Maybe. I'm giving no legal advice here.
Yeah, and I think like you said, it depends on the business nature of the business, and it could be a timing issue, right?
Yeah.
Because I'll say example, if you are, what's one that you can get that can be high potential, like lawsuits, like think about a transportation company, right?
Oh yeah.
Because now you have passengers and things like that. You want to make sure from a legal perspective you're covered in different places. So I think it's not an either or. I think it's not an either or. I think it's more so of like, when do you contact the when do you contact an accountant? It just depends on your business, but some will be a little bit more riskier than the other one. That's the one thing you want to look at. If there's a lot of risk involved, a potential for lawsuits and liabilities and contracts, things like that, you definitely want to talk to an attorney early. And it may not be have an attorney on what retainer, what they call, and you start paying them every month. We may just be talking to that attorney that one time at the beginning to do, to get contracts in order and things like that.
Right, right. And some of them will tell you that too, because I mean, if you're starting a business, ideally, you probably don't have the money to keep paying an attorney like that, on a frequent basis.
Yeah.
Most of that money will probably need to go into your business first, or you probably won't have any business to pay him anyway.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think it does depend highly upon what kind of business you're starting and when you might need it. It's, there's different stages when you might need that.
Your medicine, malpractice, things like that, So
Yeah.
it just really depends. But they both are equally important in their respective areas. Yeah.
Agreed. Um, Edwin says it's more of a phase thing. The lawyer comes in first for intellectual property and legal purposes, but the accountant is more of a monthly and quarterly operations. You see him more than your lawyer.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Hopefully, if you're not in trouble, but you might have to see both of them. So let me ask you this, Rick. And as far as, since we're getting into the legal aspect of things, we have some people here who are based in Haiti. We have some people here who also have some operations here in the U.S. Can you speak a little bit about if there's anything they need to be thinking about? And I know taxes is not your area or your domain per se, but maybe just something they need to probably keep in mind if they're running a business in the US versus Haiti. Well, let me take this. Somebody that's running a business in Haiti, but might be registered in the US.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so, and taxes, I say this. So I do taxes and tax returns for businesses and individuals. There's different levels of tax, right? So sometimes if I get in contact with a business and they have, their tax scenario is highly complicated, then I may refer them to, someone who specializes only in taxes. But for the most part, most tax scenarios that businesses have, I can handle. But the one thing you want to look at, because the tax code does speak to that, right? Because if you're here in the U.S. And your business is registered here in the U.S., then the U.S. they definitely want the taxes for that.
They want their money.
Yeah, they want their money, and so even if your business is overseas, you just have to be careful with abiding by the tax laws when it comes to international, because you still have a business here, so even though you're making money from other countries, you still may be liable for that tax because the business is originating here. I do know, as an example, if you are, let's say you live overseas, and you're making money there, then there's a tax credit that you can get, which then will make a lot of that money kind of like they won't tax you on it. So it just all depends on what your scenario is. So the one thing I would say is just don't think that because the business is doing, it's operating in another country doesn't mean you're not liable. So you still may be liable for the taxes.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. I want to share my screen with you or with everybody, and let me do this. See if I can get.
And whenever you want to switch to that part, I did find the sample company I can pull up.
Okay, well, go ahead. How about you share yours first?
And I'll start out with the profit and loss. Let's see. Oh, it says that you have to allow the.
Let me do that for you. I'm sorry.
Or if it's easier, I think you can also make me a host, which might be easier either way.
Voila, you're the host now. It's your show.
All right, perfect. Let's see. Here we go. All right, let me know you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right, perfect. So, this is a sample company that is within QuickBooks, right? And so I believe this company it's landscaping. Perfect. So this is a profit and loss statement, right? And which is also, you also hit a traditional accounting term. We refer to this as an income statement. But everybody would normally just say P&L or profit and loss. So this particular financial statement will show you what is your income and what is your expenses. So it's going to be revenue minus your expenses is going to be your profit. That's the highest level of kind of like the accounting equation, right? And so the top half is going to be your income, and then the bottom half is going to be your expenses. So I know someone had asked if we can get a little more hands-on. Do you have, I forgot who asked that question, but
That was Edwin. So in the chat, Edwin says he wants to, bookkeeping can be a GPS sometimes. If you are strategic enough, it can guide you. So how does accounting bring about the superior way of doing things? What are the specific features it has that separate it from simple bookkeeping?
got you. Okay. So the bookkeeping technically, right now, right, where you have, this is split up between like design income, right? This 2250. The bookkeeping just says, hey, when this amount of income or when these different transactions come in, I will categorize, $50 here, $100 here, $1,000 here as design income. So then now when you come and produce this financial statement, then you will have your design income, the total that's 2250. So now from an accounting standpoint, when you come in and say, okay, I want to look at all of my revenue for the month, and let's see, let's go ahead and piece this out to months. Okay, right? So you can come in here and see like, okay, from a month to month standpoint, here's my total income. I guess this individual, let me go back to last year. I think it may give a full year. Let's see. Okay, no, it just has this year. Okay. So QuickBooks gives if you have a QuickBooks account, it gives you this sample company. So anybody can go in and kind of play around with the sample company and make changes. But what I was saying is, so accounting will say like, okay, this is my monthly income, right? And then you can say from month to month, what has changed. And you can start to look at it from a perspective of why did it change? You can start to look at, to say like, hey, I know, my Septembers are usually slow, or my Octobers are usually slow. But this is how much money I've made this far this year. Am I going to hit my goal, my revenue goal? You can look at your expenses to see now, because it's more, you're going to start to analyze and say like, hey, am I spending too much? Am I, staying under budget? Am I accounting for my taxes, or seeing how much income I have so far to kind of account for like how much taxes I'm going to have to pay at the end of the year. So that's where the accounting can start to come into play. And then you can say like, hey, last quarter sales was a little bit lower than the prior quarter, right? And so then you can say like, let me spend a little bit more on advertising to push my sales up, right? Or you may be able to look and say, and depending on how you have it structured, and this is also where some accounting knowledge comes into play. What I do for some of my clients, we piece out their income streams. So this landscaping service, right, they have design income. But let's say you didn't have another one that was strictly maybe maintenance income, right? And then maybe you have another one that was I don't know, helping realtors or the real estate industry with like maintenance of a house that is on the market, right? And I'm just throwing things out there, top of my head. You can piece that out into separate income items, and then you can kind of see based off of those income items which one is actually making you money, and which one is more profitable. Sometimes you want to make the decision that, hey, let me drop this service because that service is not as profitable as, my service A. Service A to kind of the service B. So that's where accounting kind of comes into play and helps you decide and decipher and make those decisions. But if you don't understand it from the accounting perspective, then you won't be able to, kind of think that way and make those decisions. So your cost of goods sold, as an example, it's understanding what's everything that goes into cost of goods sold, right? So if you're selling a product, a lot of people like to sometimes talk about cost of goods sold when you have a service, but it's really mainly for when you have a product, right? And you have inventory, or even if you're a retailer, like you buy wholesale and then you retail. So everything that goes into cost of goods sold would, be like purchasing the inventory, the shipping sometimes for the inventory, the storage of the inventory, like in a warehouse, all that gets added to the cost of inventory. And then when you sell that product, that gets added to cost of goods sold, which is now an expense. And so, this is not, and then I was about to say, so now when you look at cost of goods sold, the other thing about accounting is what the the business industry, when it comes to creditors, when it comes to lenders and banks, when it comes to investors, they speak accounting. So when they talk to you, they're not going to say, hey, how much does it cost to make your product? What they're going to say is like, what was your cost of goods sold for the year? And so if you don't even know what cost of goods sold are, how are you going to be able to answer that question, right?
Right.
And so you think about the pandemic that happened, and everybody was applying for the EILD through the SBA funds as well as the PPP, right? They were asking on that application in that form, they're asking you a bunch of accounting terms.
Yeah, I remember seeing that cost in goods.
Yeah, so this is the language of business. Like, what's your cost of goods sold? What is your what was your payroll cost for the quarter? What was your revenue? What was your net income? Like this is accounting. So a bookkeeper, although in bookkeeping, although you are categorizing everything in different areas, if you don't understand the accounting piece, then you're not going to be able to answer those questions right. You're not going to be able to get the approved for the business loan. You're not going to be able to, realize like, hey, I'm making sales, but then at the end of the month, I don't really see where the money went. It's understanding the accounting and the flow and how what you do as a business, what it affects in what area.
And that's a good breakdown, Rick. So looking at this sheet right here, I know it might look a little daunting for some people.
Let me
But
let me take it back to the 1 month the 1 month view.
okay. Well, no, I was gonna even just ask. You can do that. I'm wondering. Okay, I'm looking at this. I'm confused. How do I, as a, how are you gonna take me from not knowing much about the accounting side of my business to getting a sheet to look like this? I mean, maybe I'm keeping track of some of my stuff. Maybe I don't. But
Yeah.
how do we get to this point right here?
So it's Rome wasn't built in a day, right? So I could tell you, like I recently onboarded like a new client, right, last week, and we had a discussion today, and just talking through their books, and just first of all, me getting an understanding of their business, how they operate, how they make their money, what expenses there are, and it's just basically building that relationship and starting with, okay, this is where you do for your inventory. We need to track your inventory, and why we need to track it. We need to, put the systems in place to be able to say, because it affects your cost of goods sold, right? To say like, hey, whenever you buy inventory, we need to track it, have your employees do an inventory count at the end of every month. So then you know how much is sold, because that is going to feed into cost of goods sold. So it's without taking a business owner through like a traditional, hey, let's sit down and put you in a class and learn accounting. It's more so going to be a little bit like hands-on learning as you progress and as you have that relationship. And even if you're outsourcing it, you're still, at the very least, you still want to know, what the financial statements are, and then you'll just pick things up like at any job that we start, right? You'll
Yeah.
pick things up along and so the thing about it, I'll say this too, when we talked about CPAs and accountants, and for those who know, CPA just is a certified public accountant. So if you hire one and outsource, or they work with you, there are different approaches, right? I know some CPAs that they don't want to waste time teaching you anything, or because they're like not trying to, because they're because it's for them, they're just like, hey, I'm here to do it for you, right? Like, don't worry about it. I'm gonna take care of it. It's gonna be right. It's gonna be accurate. I'll take care of it for you. And some business owners, I find they're like that. I've had someone talk to me and they're like, hey, Rick, I don't care. They're like, I dealt with a CPA in the past before. And when I would ask them a question, they'd give me all these options. And I'm like, this is what I pay you for. I want you to tell me which answer to choose, like which route to go. That's what I'm looking for. And then some other people are like, hey, I want to understand this a little bit more. I want to get a little bit of the education piece. So it all depends on your approach as a business owner and then the approach as the CPA. So if you're a business owner who wants somebody to help you manage it and you want to learn, then you want to make sure that's the type of CPA that you connect yourself with.
So I got a follow-up question to those two people, but before I get to mine, let me take one from Edwin. He said, this is which brings me to my question. For those of us who have services, most books are written for products. How can we leverage accounting best? So those people who have those services, how is this going to help them out? How can they leverage this?
So if you have services, obviously you don't have goods, right? What you just would replace, like saying cost of goods sold with your cost of services, because you still want to try to get an understanding of, hey, if I provide this service, what will it take me to provide this service? And am I being profitable in providing that service, right? So let's just say, let's say you're a barber, right? That's a service. You're cutting hair. And then so as a barber, let's say, and we'll just say you pay your booth rent, which is going to be your monthly payment, right? And then you need to know, right, how many heads you need to cut to be able to, one, make your rent, and then two, go above your rent to get and have profit. But then you need to know how much in was it disinfecting for the clippers and the maintenance of the clippers, and and your combs and your materials and things like that, and then promoting yourself if you're doing any advertisements or anything like that, to be able to now say how many customers, and then am I pricing myself right? So it's how many customers at the price point that I'm going to be providing that service will I need to get to be able to cover my rent first, the booth rent, and then, or if you own the barbershop, then or own your location, that whatever the lease agreement is, how many do I need to cover that, and then to cover all my other expenses. So although yes, you're correct that a lot of the traditional income statement has cost of goods sold, you could just replace that with cost of sales and then include everything needed to provide that you consider to provide that service. For me, like in my business, I don't track a cost of goods sold. I just go through and just add it in the expenses down here further down. So it's just a matter of understanding and the numbers, what's being shown on this financial statement, then to be able to make that decision, those decisions. So hopefully that answer your question, like from a service standpoint, how you can like optimize it.
I assume you probably do well with people with services then.
Yeah. I mean, services. I think with products is you have to then add in the inventory management piece. So as service businesses don't have that. So inventory management, it just adds a little extra. I mean, I even know some CPAs who don't necessarily deal with clients who have inventory just because.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because like I told you, every CPA is different. Every CPA, every accountant is different. They're not all going to do the same thing. So, you'll find some, and then that individual, I know they don't just tell people like, no, I don't work with you. They'll just refer you to someone else in their network.
Right.
But yeah, so with the product businesses, you just have that additional inventory management piece.
So I want to go back to these two different kind of people that you talked about earlier. Those who, one, don't want to deal with it, like, hey, Rick, I hired you to do all this stuff. Don't ask me anything about numbers. That's why I'm paying you.
Yeah.
And then you have those that really do want to get to know a little bit more. they might not dive too deep in it, but every time they come in and talk to you, they might
Mhm.
ask questions. They want to dive a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Out of those two types of individuals, who do you see typically have more, from your experience and your observation, if you've paid attention to it, uh, who usually has a better run business? Those who dive in a little bit deeper to their numbers, or those who just hire somebody to deal with it and go about their way?
So those who dive a little bit deeper into it, because I feel like they're a little bit more connected to their numbers, and it helps them in their decision making. Now, you could be a person could be a little bit of both, right? To where they're not diving too far into the details, and they know that you're doing it for them, and then they understand like the end result. They like you produce this income statement and you give to them, and they can go through this and do a level of review that gives them enough information to then move forward,
Mm-hmm.
right? To make decision making. That first individual that I was saying, who they're just like, hey, tell me what to do. Um, I don't want to be in all the details. The issue I see with that individual is if then the CPA, let's say, doesn't do a good job, or um, and it may not even be they don't do a good job, but they may not be aware of where you're trying to go as a business.
Mm-hmm.
You're the one that knows where you're trying to go as a business. So if they just do it for you and give it to you, there's just a little bit less efficiency there with those type of individuals.
Yeah.
But that I've seen, not to say that that individual, that business owner won't be successful. It's just not as optimized as the one who kind of understands it a little bit more.
Yeah, and that definitely makes a lot of sense. And I bring that up because, like we mentioned before, there are some people who are just have no interest in the numbers. Um, but it does make sense to at least try to understand the general aspect of how to review your business, right? To see what's making sense. And I think you said it best: learn how to optimize um, your situation, because you can't exactly know how to move things forward if you don't really even know what's going on within your business, what you're spending money on, what's costing you this and that, what you're making. So I
Yeah.
think it makes sense to have a you know so is there is there like a general accounting class, or is there some general accounting stuff that a CPA might go through us with to help us just get a general understanding of it, without diving too deep, so we can understand? Or is that just something we have to kind of study on our own?
So you're saying that they would help teach you or get you that understanding, or
Yeah. Like, in your style of how you run your business and your
yeah.
clients, um, do you typically like to dive in a little bit deeper to help the clients understand, or are you more so of a I'll handle it and
Oh yeah. No. I honestly I do. I'm one of the individuals that I want to get you to understand your numbers, because again, it's your business and you should know how to run it based off of your financials and based off of the performance. Because your financials is going to show you the performance of your business to be able to then make decisions. Because you know, if you have, let's say you're a restaurant, right? And on the restaurant, you have like 20 different items on your menu, right? Just like a small restaurant, right? I can call you up and say, hey, Ron, these particular 3 items on your menu, I think you should cancel them and not sell them anymore. And you're like, well, what do you mean? People, when they eat it, they say it's the best thing they ever tasted, or whatever, right? And I'm like, yeah, but one, not a lot of people are ordering it. And every time you buy some of the ingredients for it, a lot of it spoils and goes to waste, right? So now that's lost money because you purchased um, the ingredients, and the technically that would go under supplies, right? The food supplies you purchased, and it spoils, it's lost money. So you can save that money and not cook those and take those 3 items off of your menu, right?
Mm,
But if you are someone who understands, from the accounting perspective, how that affects your bottom line, how that affects the profits that go to your pockets, then you can understand it. You may even find it out yourself. You may even be looking for that when you do the review of your financial statements. And so that's kind of like two different ways. So I definitely like to help business owners understand even if it's not necessarily teaching you how to be an accountant. It's really the bookkeeping piece that it's more so, it's so task oriented that you may not need to be involved in the details of that piece. But when it comes to looking at this income statement, understanding what this is saying to you, to be able to make your decisions for, like you said, those three things, right? To build longevity in your business, your decision making, your profitability.
Mm. Yeah, that leads me to a conversation that we had before, especially when you're just talking about the restaurants and looking at um, the food items and what might be causing you to waste some money at this point. We're in a pandemic right now, right? First time most of us have been in well, at least to this magnitude.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and what tips, what advice do you have for people right now? Some general on accounting, and even if we haven't been paying attention to our profit and loss sheet, what tips do you have for people right now in the pandemic businesses?
Yeah. The one thing I'll say, this is just from a generic standpoint, like if your finances have not been up to par up to this point, right? This is a good break in your day-to-day normal activities, being busy. Maybe if things have slowed down, to get a handle on your finances and your numbers, right? To review and see what's going on, or how you have been performing. When it comes to trying to survive, right? Because sales are a little bit lower. One area you can look at is kind of like your what we call fixed expenses, and those are the expenses that no matter no matter if what your business is doing every month, like that expense is going to be there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So um keeping up with the restaurant, right? If you have a restaurant and bar, and obviously during the pandemic, a lot of these restaurants were closed for a couple of months, and some of them are starting to pick up, but still haven't picked up as much. Maybe you have a certain amount of cable package because you had these big screen TVs in there because you were, watching the games and the pay-per-view and things like that. Maybe that's a service you want to cancel for the time being, or put on pause. Maybe there is different subscriptions that you're doing, because there's a lot of subscriptions to a lot of things nowadays,
Yeah.
whether publications, whether it's simple things like the Wall Street Journal, whether it's a listing of some sort, like a directory that your company is listed in that you're paying for every month. Look at those fixed expenses to see, like, okay, which one of these I can parse out, I can pull down. Because the thing with fixed expenses is, no matter if your sales are up or if your sales are down, that expense is always going to be there, right?
Right.
Uh, so with your sales being down, and you have like your cost of goods sold, for example, right? If your sales are down, and you may not spend the money to purchase more inventory because you haven't had the sales orders come in, right? But if you have a warehouse that you have a lot of items in, inventory items, or if not inventory, let's say just supplies or things like that that you can kind of go through, get rid of, that warehouse is always going to keep costing you the same amount every month. So look at those fixed expenses. Look at the subscriptions, the ones that are coming out routinely. Review your finances. If your finances have been they're all over the place.
Yeah.
Even before the pandemic, you didn't know how much money you made per month. Now's a good time to go through that, and get that in order. So then that way, once business picks back up again, then you kind of have a clean slate to start off from. Um, Definitely, I know there's been different grants and things like that. Definitely look out to get those. But here's the thing: no matter how much money you could be given or you can receive, right? Whether it's grant money, whether it's funding, whether it's a loan, if you weren't operating efficiently from a financial perspective, you're not going to moving forward, even with the additional funds. And so you saw that a lot with the pandemic, and some businesses going, under really quickly because what I like to say, I think we talked about this before, I like to say that the businesses are operating from sale to sale.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, we all understand and have heard the term of like operating, paycheck to paycheck. But
Yeah.
operate from sale to sale. So that's why when they had to close for a month or 2 months or 3 months, they couldn't last because they didn't have enough in reserves. So start to look at, like, put a budget in place, look at how much expenses are rolling out the month and kind of trim the fat, and then kind of put a plan in place to start putting to the side and saving. Learn from this moment, put money to the side and understand, like, hey, this could something, if not this exact thing can happen, something can come along that where my sales are lower, that I can kind of weather that storm.
Yeah.
To answer that question, there was one other thing. You could look at structuring your business a little differently, even if it's temporarily. And what I'll say is like that restaurant, right? If you have, like, the example, like there's certain restaurants here in the city, where their prices are more so fitted for a sit in and dine in restaurant, and you have an ambiance and things like that, as opposed to a grab and go type restaurant. Normally the grab and go restaurants, like most of our Caribbean restaurants, right, they're priced a lot lower because it's grab and go, it's lunch specials and things like that, right? If you are a restaurant and the equivalent of that meal is maybe, I don't know, closer, like let's say $20, right? And I'll use a grill plate just as an example. At his restaurant, normally you see a grill plate between like $9, $11, somewhere around there. But if you
in
were
South Florida, man,
you're right. In South Florida, yeah, here in Georgia,
it's pricey up here in Atlanta, man.
no more here. But if you are, let's say you were a sit down restaurant and your plate of grill was more like $17, right? Now that the pandemic is kind of open, back up, and businesses are like, hey, we do takeout, come bring lunch. Most people aren't going to do takeout for $17 for a grill plate. So you may want to change, you may want to say something like, hey, this is my, these are my, we have our to-go specials. Because yes, your customers may be used to paying $17, $18, but that's because they were coming in, they were sitting down, there was a DJ, there was, there was a little ambiance.
There was the experience.
Yeah, it was experience. Yeah, you're paying a little bit more for experience. So some businesses, and every business is going to be different. So you may want to kind of like just look at it, especially after you trim the fat, because a lot of times you would do that. You had those prices because you were covering your expenses, right? So you trim the fat and say, like, okay, how could I at least try to bring in some type of sales? So those are some of the keys I would say right now in the pandemic. So kind of take this time to review your finances, get them in order, reach out to an accountant if you haven't used one before, and kind of help them get you set up, get you right, get you in order. Definitely review those expenses to trim the fat, and then look to kind of do some creative things with your business to keep you not ahead of the game, to kind of get you right until we all kind of get from under this pandemic. So
yeah, good tips, Rick. I have another question, but I want to give everybody else a chance to go ahead and ask some questions. So if you have some questions for Rick, I'll unmute you. You don't have to type it in the chat unless you really want to. And I'll go ahead and unmute you. Just raise your hand, and we'll take that question for Rick. So floor is open. Questions. I think I need to get my chat open. But let's see. You can stop sharing your screen too if you want.
Oh,
yeah, that way we can see the chat a bit more clearly. Okay. So I see something from Edwin. He typed a little bit. He said, "What are 3 baby steps an entrepreneur who wants to do accounting by himself can take?" Good question. That's probably what some of them would do, but.
Oh, let's see. What are 3 baby steps? And actually, so I'll answer this question, but then I have a follow-up for you, in a sense of like, because do accounting yourself kind of, so my question for you is why do you would want to do your accounting yourself? But I'll try to take a stab at your 3 baby steps. One of the baby steps is to get an understanding of the financial statements, like I talked about, right? So the two main ones are the income statement, balance sheet. We didn't look at the balance sheet, but the balance sheet is where it'll show your assets, like cash, if you have a vehicle, if you have any, big equipment, like going back to that restaurant, right? If they purchased a
I think I
blender or,
have one.
that might be a asset, right? So getting an understanding of the financial statements, one. Two, making sure you are, oh, this is a big one. I should have said earlier, definitely at the beginning, is that you aren't um, having your personal expenses, personal transaction, and your business transaction mixed together,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
Yeah. So that's like the number one thing that business owners that they do is, because a lot of people look at they don't want to open a separate business account because they look at that $12 fee that some of these banks charge because you don't have a certain balance. Like that, like that's the end of the world, but you want to make sure it's separate, and you want to definitely keep your business and your personal. So definitely you want to put a system in place. So accounting software, business bank account separate from your personal account. Um, and then you never want to just, and when you keep separate, it's not just the actual accounts, but actually like taking money from that account. You don't want to just go to your business account and just take money out. I'll see that too. People say, oh yeah, I got a separate business account. And then I look at it and it's like your rent's coming out your business account. You're paying for your car insurance out your business account. The car that's not in the name of the business, right? You go into the ATM taking cash out. So you always want to keep a degree of separation. Um, and then I would say the third thing, I'll say, because I need to understand everything before I delegate. And I would say, so the third thing I would say, third baby step, let's see, understand financial statements. Um, the third step would be getting an understanding for the taxes that you potentially would have to pay. So
Okay.
again, if you're not going to be the one doing your taxes, but you still want to understand what goes into the taxes, and what can make you liable for your taxes, because a lot of business owners will come to me at the end tax season. Listen, once December 31st hits and comes and it goes, there isn't much you can do to change how much taxes you owe,
Oh man.
because the year is over, right?
Right.
It's we're filing our taxes like this year. We filed our taxes this year for last year, so last year's gone. So you want to make sure you address taxes at the beginning of the year, so then you kind of make your decisions and make your choices along the year. Let's see.
I was just typing
Yeah,
those
okay.
three things.
That's you writing it in there. Okay, yeah. Before I can delegate, and also because help is hard to find. So I mean,
Rick is right here.
it
Man,
may,
what are you talking
yeah,
about?
yeah. No, so
Rick
this
is
is what
right
I'll
here.
say, Edward. This is what I'll say, Edward. It's not necessarily help is hard to find. I would say to you, you want to um, first determine that, like I said earlier, the type of CPA or accountant you would want to work with, right? And then also what are the things that you want? What are the deliverables? Because if you sometimes go to a CPA and just say, I want you to do my bookkeeping, they'll do your bookkeeping, right? But if you want to be able to know a little bit, more in depth, maybe you go with a CPA that does more virtual CFO services, right? Um, and then I would also say too, from a bookkeeping standpoint, there are what we call big box retailers, right? Where they will do bookkeeping for you, like a company, like an actual big company, right? That will do bookkeeping for you. Um, and it's at a fraction of the cost. But the only thing I would caution going that route is that you kind of lose that expertise from an accountant, because at that point you still will be dealing with bookkeepers. You will ask those bookkeepers certain questions and they will say, we are not accountants. Um, please consult with your accountant. So yeah, so those would be the three baby steps, I would say.
That's good to know. Let me ask you one last question, Rick. Um, as far as those people, small businesses that are starting out, when they are trying to separate their finances, we're going back to number two, don't
Yeah.
mix the personal with your business finance. Does that mean then they should be paying themselves a salary maybe once a month to kind of make sure that there's, separation between those finances. So say, okay, I'm making this much a month, so I'll pay myself
Yeah.
$2,000 and transfer into that account, and then I'll start spending out of my personal account. Is that the best strategy to be taken?
Yeah. So that's a good question, because so let me circle back when I say a degree of separation, right? So yes, you want to basically create a system for how you're going to pay yourself. And so at the very basic level, transferring money out, right, from your business on into like your personal account is how you at least want to do it, right? So then that way you're creating like, hey, I am paying myself, right? There are payroll services that will allow you to then, actually pay yourself like a W-2 employee and take taxes out for you, and submit the taxes to the government on your behalf once, when you get paid, and they'll send it to you quarterly. But that's what I mean by creating a degree of separation. You want to basically show and record the transaction, the transfer, to then you be able to follow the money trail to say, I'm sending money to I'm sending, 10% of my sales to myself every month, and that's my owner's pay. From a tax perspective, you can still account for that throughout the year. And there's a thing called, quarterly estimated taxes. A lot of people may have heard of, but it's where you would pay your taxes, or what would be your tax liability from a quarterly standpoint. Because one thing people don't understand, I don't want to get too much into taxes, but one thing people understand is that when you work a W-2 job, your employer may be taking taxes out of your paycheck every 2 weeks. They're holding on to that, and they're not necessarily remitting it or sending it out to the IRS like every quarter. Hold on, plug my laptop here so it won't die.
Oh, please.
Yeah. So your employer is sending that out to the IRS quarterly, because the IRS, for the most part, they want their money every quarter. They don't want to wait to the end of the year. They want their money every quarter. So now when you're your own business, they still want their money every quarter. So, as you're paying yourself every month, then at least you'll be able to see a gauge of, hey, this is amount of money, income I'm taking in, this is how much tax I need to pay. So yeah, so to your point, Ron, it's just a matter of creating that separation. And that's the best way to withdraw money out of your business. You at least want to, the very minimum, you at least want to show a transfer, and it can be electronic, right? You can have, like I know for myself, my business accounts are at the same bank as my personal accounts. I do have myself set up on payroll, but even before I did that, if I transferred money out, then from the bookkeeping standpoint, right, I can categorize that transfer as owner's pay, So yeah, so you definitely want to do that.
Okay, good. Any other questions? I know I have a million, but I'm not going to ask anymore.
Very good. Good. Let's.
Yeah, you probably. So you did a pretty good job, Rick. So, last thing, what do you want everybody to take away? Those who, because I know we have a lot of people who are just starting businesses, but those people who are also still small businesses as well, maybe that have been in business for a little while. What do you want them to take away from this presentation?
So the main thing I want people to take away from presentation is just in a sense of not allowing your accounting, the finances to your business be an afterthought. People say like, I'm gonna start a business. They think about, name of the business, my branding, my website, the look of the business, the logo and everything. They never think about financial structure. They never think, you know, opening a checking account, which banks do I want, um, what the accounting software, and integrating everything, because it's easier and it's more efficient. And I recommend, you want to build a strong financial foundation from the beginning. So in that way, as your business soars, hopefully, you have that in place. And to let everyone know that, the statistics is very high on business that fail because of poor cash flow management, not an understanding of their finances. I believe 82% of businesses fail within the first, I believe it's 5 years, 3 years or 5 years, because of poor cash flow management, right? Poor cash flow management because you don't have an understanding of your accounting, to understand what's going on, your expenses, you're spending too much, what's not working, So don't let your accounting piece be an afterthought, and don't think of accounting as it's just one of those things like, hey, um, this is, for the nerds and this. Listen, if you want to make money, trust me, the individuals who make money in this country, whether it's on the business or personal side, they have an account they're working with. All the companies, whether it's Amazon, whether it's, Microsoft, Apple, PayPal, these companies, they have a whole accounting team, a whole accounting department, that helps run their finances to make their business successful. So for you as an individual, as business owners, as partners, as startups, you want to make sure you take it seriously, because you can't improve what you can't measure. You can't track what you're not measuring, or you can't measure what you're not tracking. And so that's what you're counting your finances all about. Don't look at it as, just the nitty gritty, the details. It's boring. Like, listen, you started a business, you have a vision. You want to make sure your vision, continues. You want to make sure that you're putting as much profits in your pockets as possible. The worst thing to do is think you're having all these sales, and you look at, your cash, and you're like, I'm barely making money, but I have all these sales. Where's all the money going? Or your business is growing and you are making a lot of sales, and then now you have to lose it all to taxes, right? And so you want to make sure you get the help you need. You don't know what you don't know. Even if you think like, hey, I can handle it, I can do it. You don't know what you don't know. So, someone like myself, we can always help you to get to that next level, and we can help you optimize, from a financial standpoint. So that's what I want people to take away. Just kind of like, it's important. A lot of businesses fail because of this. They can be doing, even if they've been in business for a couple of years, they can be doing a lot better, if they just really kind of look at their finances and take it more seriously, just to keep more money in your pockets at the end of the day.
Definitely. So we appreciate that, Rick. I appreciate that. I think this was a wonderful session. I think it was a much needed session. And I'm definitely going to be bothering you anyway. You already do some stuff for the chamber or for BEL, so you kind of know what that aspect of it, but you don't do my personal accounting anyway. So you're the solution for, I think, a lot of people here, or you can at least guide them to the right CPA if they don't feel the right fit. So how can they get in contact with you?
Easiest thing, if you want to send me, let me put my email in the chat. You want to send me an email, it's my first dot last name. So Rick Sinordo at modern-cpa.com.
You got a website too.
Yeah, they got a website. Yeah. And so let me put it in the chat. And yeah, if you go on the website and if you hit Let's Talk, it should give you information to schedule with me. If you look me up by my name,
so we can choose an appointment. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see your screen. Yep. You
okay.
Can there. If you look me up by my name on social media, you see my profiles and accounts. You connect with me there. Yeah, and so that's definitely how you can contact me. And then one thing I will say, Ron, I'm working on, or I'm kind of laying out the plans, and hopefully finish this year, right? So now that tax season is done, since it was extended, I am working on a like an online course to help business owners learn more about what they should be doing, things like what they should be doing with their finances to kind of like take them to that next level.
Yeah. Nice. So I'm signing up, and I'm getting all the fellows to sign up, and whoever I know, sign up for that course once you get it going. So
yeah, definitely.
You said you're working on that. You should have it by the end of this year, or
yeah. That's what I'm gonna put out. Hold me to it. Hold me to it.
End of the year. I heard it, everybody. So we're gonna be asking Rick for this course at the end of the year. I'm gonna put it out there. It's out on Facebook. It's on Facebook Live too, man. So
yeah.
Accountability. All right. So appreciate it, Rick. If you all have any questions, Rick's information is right here in the chat. You can also check him out on his website as well. And I think that's pretty cool. You can schedule a 1 hour strategy consultation. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Modern-cpa.com. That's the website. So definitely check it out. And you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook, and LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, yes. LinkedIn, yep. And LinkedIn as well. Yeah. So you can find me by my name on LinkedIn and my business on LinkedIn as well. But yeah, you can do the search and you'll get me in all avenues.
Awesome. So definitely hit up Rick. I'll be bothering you anyway. And don't forget, you all follow us on Instagram as well at belinitiative.com. At Bell Initiative. I'm sorry. The website is belinitiative.com. Same thing on Facebook. Until next time, God bless you all. Appreciate it. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you for having me. Thank you everyone for joining.
Keep your finances together and stay rich and safe from the pandemic.
Definitely.
All right, everybody. Thanks, Rick.
All right, have a good night.
Bye, everyone.